All right, we're back. Welcome. We have with us right now, we have Carol Thornton, who is with the Partnership for Better Health. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And if you could just give our folks who are watching just a little short summary, what is the Partnership for Better Health?
Partnership for Better Health is a local health conversion foundation. So, for those who are local to the Carlisle area, it came from the sale of the Carlisle Hospital in 2001 when it went from nonprofit to profit. And then all the assets from the nonprofit were put into us as a community foundation. In 2021 will be the 20-year mark. And since 2001, we've given away over $40 million in grants.
Wow, that's a lot of money. That's great. So, why is the partnership addressing housing and homelessness?
Well, 3 years ago, during a strategic planning process, we had been very focused on the typical health topics, diabetes, nutrition, and so forth. But we heard from the community that there were other greater issues, including housing and homelessness, that is recognized as a basis for health. How can you be healthy if you don't have safe and stable housing? Um, so, uh, 3 years ago, we embarked on diving deeper into the issue of housing and homelessness in the greater Carlisle area as well as Perry County.
That's great. That's great. And so, you guys have something called the roadmap. Could you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, 3 years ago, we convened different partners, including CARES, Safe Harbor, and some other, like the County Housing Redevelopment Authority, to come together and think about what is the trajectory that we needed to go to address affordable housing and homelessness. And the biggest piece was we wanted to recognize that homelessness should be rare and brief, and not reoccur for families and individuals. That all residents should have access to safe and affordable housing, that people can access all the other services that are related, such as childcare, employment, and the whole range, mental health, and that everyone should have a safe place to call home, in order for people to thrive and be healthy. Um, so, over the last year, we've taken this roadmap and we've partnered with the Cumberland County Housing Redevelopment Authority and the Coordinated Entry System, to put that in action. And there's four main goals of the roadmap. One is the Coordinated Entry System, which helps determine where people have the greatest needs and what services best match them, and try to make it so that they only have to go to one place instead of visiting 6 different shelters or other services. And we want to create more affordable housing opportunities, which is really bigger than one partner in itself. And that is something that, prior to COVID, we were really ramping up that effort. But yeah, I think we'll be taking a look at how to continue looking at how to create more affordable housing in the greater region. Um, and then other ones is obviously that in order to be successful in having housing is to have employment. So what services can we provide to people, to get them on the right path? And the most important part was building the collaborative capacity of all the different organizations that are being a part of this evening, and the different discussions, that we all have different roles to play. But in order to be effective together, we need to collaborate and be collective, and strategic together in order to address our shortage of affordable housing and safe housing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the issue around affordable housing. A lot of folks, if they're not engaged with folks who are experiencing homelessness, they see places for sale, they see new developments going up, those type of things. And it may not connect for people that there's a challenge with affordable housing. I wonder if you can speak a little bit about the challenges that we face in this county when it comes to affordable housing, and what does that actually mean then for people in a very practical sense?
Right. Well, I think if anything, people can see that we're one of the fastest growing counties in Pennsylvania. And with that comes there's a great demand for housing here, which means that, um, those who own property or who want to rent can actually charge higher because they know they can get that price. But that really puts people at a disadvantage if you don't make enough income. I'm not sure if anyone else has mentioned yet on the interviews, but that, making minimum wage doesn't get you very much in affordable housing. You have to make about $19 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Cumberland County. So that's like working 80 plus hours in 1 week. And who can really do that? And especially during COVID.
Right.
So there really is a shortage of those lower cost rentals, coupled with trying to get people to have a higher income level.
Right. That kind of, I'm sure you're familiar with the Ellis numbers, and for folks that aren't familiar with that, I'm trying to remember the what it is, but I can't remember exactly what it stands for. It's one of those things, but it's kind of taken the idea of who are people that are not on at the lowest level, but they're not making enough to make it really on
Right.
on their own. And there's a pretty good chunk of folks in our county that fit into that don't qualify for services, that they're not poor enough
Right.
to get the help that they need in order to just have a sustainable life that most
Right.
people.
And they're one event away from entering
Right.
the homeless system.
Right. I mean, we deal with a lot of that with some of our folks that end up experiencing homelessness, where they had a car, something happened with their vehicle.
Mhm.
They were working, and their car broke down, and they had a huge bill, and they couldn't pay it. And so then what happens is the spiraling happens, right? And people lose their job because then they don't have transportation, and then they need food, they need all sorts. It's just this black hole that starts to happen. So yeah, that's so really important. I wanted to ask you this question. This is a question you had sent to us, actually.
Okay.
What do we know or don't know about the role of race in homelessness? I think this is a really important question, and I'm glad that this is a question that you want to address.
Right. It's been a personal journey for me. I started with the partnership over 2 years ago and learning about things in housing that I never realized. And one included redlining. And I grew up in Philadelphia area, which now that I look back on family stories, I see how my family might have thought they were being pushed out because African Americans were moving in, but it was really they were being enticed to move out in order to move to other areas. And
Could you explain what redlining is for those that aren't familiar?
sure, I'm not going to give the most technical answer, but basically it was bankers and the federal government would redline a neighborhood where they said this is where the African Americans, I think, can move in, or maybe it's the reverse. Whichever, but let's forget the red line. Just basically, they designated neighborhoods where they said, we want white people to live here, and white people can only sell to white people in order to keep African Americans out. And then they would build the high rises in areas for the African Americans. And it was just this underlying policy that has transcended even to today. And that's where I was getting with my point was what we do know is we did do a little data project with the coordinated entry system last summer. And our intern was able to see that for everyone who's on that waiting list to get placed, 20% of those people are African American.
Wow.
In Cumberland County. But Cumberland County's overall population for African American is 4.4%. So wow. They are more greatly having homelessness in their lives than they should be. It really should be around that 4%, if all else being equal. But
right. And I'm sure that has an impact on so many other things, right? All these homelessness is not a compartmentalized problem that people face. They end up with all of these other things that compound it and make it worse. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that in relation to what you're talking about.
Sure. Well, the one thing I think about is a lot of people will say, well, people can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they'll figure it out. But if you've had a family that has constantly been affected by policies that segregated them or made it that they made less income. Another example being World War II, the GI Bill. Most people don't realize that most African Americans did not qualify for that. So they didn't get that boost of economic stability after World War II like everyone else, and then they couldn't buy the home and they couldn't build the equity, and then their families didn't inherit all that, and it creates a pattern that it's hard to pull yourself out of your bootstraps when you have 75 years of not being able to build equity or income.
This is how live things work, right?
Right, yeah. So does that answer your question? Just that all these systems come into play. So if it's housing plays an issue in racism,
Right.
healthcare, food supply,
Right.
There's all these different systems that have these things built into them that have created racism to keep going despite anyone really intentionally doing it.
I think that speaks to the systemic nature of things, as opposed to a lot of times when people talk about racism, they automatically become defensive because, well, I'm not doing something deliberately racist, so therefore it doesn't exist, right? And kind of talking about what you had mentioned too, when people will say, and people say this from the goodness of their hearts of, well, just lift yourself up from your bootstraps. A lot of times people are saying this because they're starting from their own experiences being normal. And so this is what everybody's experience must start from, right? And that's just not the case, because people start from a variety of different things, and there's just certain advantages that people have that others don't, and it goes way beyond anything that they've done, or no matter how hard they work. It's not going to make that much of a difference in people's lives when you're already starting way down below somebody else who's already at the starting block, and you're starting in the locker room,
right?
That type of thing. So I just want to thank you for addressing that. The question I want to ask is, how has COVID-19 and the pandemic really kind of impacted the work that you all are doing?
Well, as I mentioned with the roadmap earlier, we have a great relationship with the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and the Community Partners for Change, formerly known as Local Housing Options Team. But definitely some of the things that we had hoped to be hitting the ground running with kind of have paused, but mostly because all of our partners are facing daily challenges. We have Beth at CARES and what she's been faced with. And then we have the other providers such as Safe Harbor or the Homeless Assistance Program. I mean, everyone's in the throes of trying to help people get through the pandemic. And it's hard to think the big picture and about where we need to go. And I think COVID just shows even a greater light on the issues that we have, the affordable housing piece being one of them. I mean, I know you talked about the moratorium earlier on evictions. Fortunately, we have that, but people are just one step away from being evicted or losing their house. And if we don't have the economic stability coming in through whether it's the federal or state, then many people will look to the foundations. And while we have we can invest some, we don't have enough to solve all of these problems.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And this really speaks to the importance of partnership. I mean, it's right in, you guys have a great name. Partnership, right in there, right? Speaks to the importance of this, that it takes a community effort to really solve this, because as we said earlier, homelessness is not this silo type of thing. People's lives are really messy and they're broken. Yeah. And that's not just people who are experiencing homelessness either, right? I know of folks who are housed, who have great jobs, and some of their lives are really messed up too. And I think it's important to say that just because somebody's homeless doesn't mean that they're the only ones who have problems. Everybody's got issues, and everybody's got challenges, just in different ways. We're all broken in different ways, right? And so this idea of partnership is so very important, whether we're talking about public and private partnerships or including foundations and nonprofits, churches as well.
Right.
So I just really appreciate you really saying about that. So if people want to learn more about the partnership or ways that they can support the work that the partnership is doing, what's the best way that they can do that?
Well, our website is www.forbetterhealthpa.org. And the other, we have a Facebook page that we've been trying to build up. So it's Partnership for Better Health on Facebook. And we've been sharing all the great stories related to COVID and the assistance we've been able to provide to keep services going, such as CARES and Safe Harbor.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Carol. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us about the work that you're doing and talking about some of these really important issues that oftentimes get forgotten as well. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Well,
have a restful night.
Yeah, sure. All right. We're going to take a little break and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.